G'day everyone, welcome to the video. If you're new here, I'm Diani and I live full-time in my Toyota Coaster bus with my dog Pepper, who is just beside me here. She's cozying up in the bus today because it's a bit cold and wet outside. So if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I spent a long time building out this bus from scratch. I bought it when it was still a school bus. It had all the seats and everything in it. And I spent about 3.5 years stripping it all out, building it into the tiny home that we live in today. And we've now been living in the bus for about 18 months. I lived in it full time for a bit over a year before we hit the road. And now we've been traveling in it for a bit over 4 months. And I'm happy to say that for the most part, I'm really happy with the way the build has turned out. Things have worked pretty much the way I expected them to work. I'm really happy with the overall design of the build, but there have been a few things that I haven't been entirely happy with. And after living in the bus for a year, I decided to make some changes. And I realized, if you saw that video that I put up last week about the studio and how I fit all my tools and materials and everything that I need into the bus. A lot of that video was actually filmed over a year ago, just after we first moved into the bus. And I realized after watching it again last week that I'd actually changed quite a few things since that video was filmed. So I thought I'd give you guys an update because I never really talked about the changes that I made at the time that I was making them. So in this video, I'm going to update you on 5 things that I changed since I did the original build in the bus. So the first thing I changed was my bed, and unlike a lot of coaster layouts that you've probably seen, I actually built my bed at the very front of the bus, just behind the driver's cab area. And there are a few reasons for that. So I tried to keep the main living area of my bus as open as possible. I didn't want to have any big built-in things blocking the windows in the front half of the bus. And with the Toyota coasters as well, you may not realize, but some of the sliding windows at the back of the bus don't actually open. It's mostly the windows at the front that open. So I wanted to be able to have the windows near my bed open so I could get that beautiful cross breeze. And the other reason I wanted it at the front was because if you saw the video last week about the studio setup, you'll know that I can actually convert this bed into a studio workbench, and this is where a lot of the studio gear is stored at the front of the bus. So that was another reason I wanted the bed up here. And the way that I built this bed is that it's kind of a single-sized bed. The main mattress that I have on here is only about 750 mil wide, so it's about the size of a caravan single mattress. But I designed the bed to be able to pull it out from the wall, so at night time I actually pull this bed out, and it's possible to make it up into almost a double-sized bed if you want to. And you would have seen, if you saw that video I did a while back where I did the full walkthrough tour of the bus, I'll put a link in the description below if you haven't seen it and you want to check it out, because you'll be able to see what the design of the bus was like inside originally. But if you saw that, you would have seen that I actually had 2 mattresses for the bed. I had this main single size mattress that's 750 mil wide, and then I had another smaller mattress that was about 450 mil wide, the same length but about half as wide as this main mattress, and I had that kind of sitting across the back. But when I pulled the bed out at night, that other mattress could flop down into the gap, and that was what gave me the almost double-sized mattress. But I found after living in the bus for a while that mattress was actually really annoying. It's quite thick. Like I've got proper inner spring custom made mattresses on this bed, and they're about 150, I think they're about 180 mil deep, so it's quite a thick mattress. And so when that separate piece was up against the window there, it actually came out quite away from the wall. And by the time I had that second piece of mattress and all my cushions on the bed, the cushions came almost to the edge of the bed, and it just, I don't know, it made the space feel a little bit more cluttered because everything was kind of pushed a bit more into towards the hallway. The mattress was also quite high when I had it up against the window, and so I really only had a small gap at the top of the window if I wanted to open it where the breeze could come through, and it just, I don't know, it just felt a little bit too closed in for me. The other thing about that mattress was that it was quite heavy. I mean, both of the mattresses, because they're inner spring mattresses, are quite weighty, and so it just added a bit of extra weight. It actually made it quite a bit harder to pull the bed out each time and to push it back in. Just having that extra mattress there was just made it a bit awkward, and it was quite heavy to pull the whole thing out with the two mattress pieces sitting on top of it. I do like to pull the bed out from the wall each night because when it's further away from the wall, it means whichever side I'm sleeping on, I can stretch out my arms, and it's just a bit more comfortable than having the bed pushed right up against the wall. So I do pull the bed out, but I realise that even when I am sleeping on the bed with it pulled out, I'm still only sleeping on this main section of mattress, and I never really used that other part of the mattress. It was really just there to fill in the gap when the bed was pulled out. And so I ended up taking that second piece of mattress out, and it's now been out of the bus for about a year, and I haven't missed it at all. The bed is a lot easier to pull out with just the one single mattress on top. It's nowhere near as heavy. I can still put all my cushions up against the window here, but because they don't take up as much space as that mattress, the window doesn't feel as blocked. Also, it's a lot easier to just push the cushions down if you want more breeze coming in through the window. And just without that extra mattress pushing everything forward, it just feels a lot more open and a lot less cluttered in this area. And on the odd occasion where Pepper actually wants to come up and sleep on my bed, I can just put the cushions, all the extra cushions that I have, down to cover that gap, and she's happy to sleep on those instead of the proper mattress. It's just me in this bus. I don't have to worry about another person being comfortable on the bed with me. So yeah, it's a lot easier now to use the bed, and the space just feels a lot more open and less cluttered, which is nice. It's also good to be able to reduce the weight in the bus whenever you can. So I'm really happy with that now. So that was the first thing that I changed. The second thing I did was I got rid of my Metho stove. So if you watched that first tour video, you'll know that inside this hatch here, I used to be able to open this up, and there was a built-in drawer with my 2-burner Metho stove built into it, so that would slide out here when I wanted to cook. And I love the Metho stoves. I mean, they're a lot safer than gas. Metho typically burns a lot cleaner. It's a good alternative to electrical cooking appliances that use a lot of power. And I have used Metho stoves when I'm camping, like inside my tent, and that for years without any issues. So I was happy to put one in the bus. The problem with it was that every single time I used this particular stove, it would set off the carbon monoxide alarm. And it wasn't just setting it off, it was actually registering really high levels, like up to 100, which is just like, you know, dangerous levels, which is just crazy. The really crazy thing is I actually still have my little Trangia camping stove that also runs on Metho, and I have it here. And I can have it sitting here on the bench, not even with the windows open or anything, and be cooking something with this, and it doesn't set off the alarm at all. So it was something to do with that double burner Origo stove that the carbon monoxide alarm was not liking at all. And it's the same Metho that I was using, so I don't think it's the fuel itself. I think inside the Origo stove, in the fuel canisters, there's like a lot of sort of cotton type fabric, like a big wick that the fuel soaks into. And I suspect that that was contaminated with something. So it wasn't burning cleanly. It was potentially either actually giving off carbon monoxide or some other chemical that the alarm was responding to. So in any case, I just, you know, you can't have a stove in the bus that's setting off a carbon monoxide alarm every time you use it. It's not safe, and I just didn't feel comfortable using it, so I ended up ditching it. And now I use the space. I just have a portable induction cooker that I got from Kmart, and it just lives in there. I can pull that out, set it up on the bench when I want to cook. And as I said, I still have my little Trangia camping stove, and I do still use this quite a bit. Like if it's days like today where it's very overcast and raining, if I have a few days like that in a row and I'm trying to conserve the power in my batteries because I'm not getting as much solar, and if I don't want to use the induction cooker, I can just get out my little Trangia Metho stove and cook on that, boil water for coffee and stuff in this, and it works really well and it doesn't set off the alarm at all. So yeah, I'm a bit sad that I didn't get to keep that Metho stove, but it just wasn't safe, and you know, I can manage quite happily with the induction cooker and this little stove instead. So another thing I did was I got rid of the built-in drawer that I had above the washing machine. So originally I built a kind of a fake drawer that had a front on it and a shelf behind, and the shelf had a plastic tub that just sat on it, and I would use that for storing my dirty laundry. But the problem with it was that it was quite awkward to pull that drawer in and out to access the clothes, and also whenever I wanted to use the washing machine, the entire thing would have to come out, and there isn't a lot of space in the back of the bus here, and it was just really awkward to get that drawer in and out. So I ended up ditching it all together, and I just have this plastic basket that I think you can get these from Kmart. I actually got this for free. Someone was giving it away. So and it's the perfect size. And now I literally just have that for my dirty washing, and it just sits on top of the washing machine like that. It's so much easier to just pull that out when I want to access it. And when I'm driving, that basket just sits on the floor and doesn't move around too much. So yeah, just a lot simpler, a lot easier. Also, again, a little bit less weight in the bus, because you know there was a bit of weight in that drawer with all the timber and everything on it. So yeah, so that was a relatively small modification, but just makes things so much easier. So the fourth thing that I changed since moving into the bus, and I know some people are going to be disappointed about this one, is I removed the piano. Yes, you heard that right. I did have a piano in this bus originally. It was a digital piano with a full-size keyboard and touch-sensitive keys, so it played just like an acoustic piano. And it was beautiful. I was so excited about putting it in the bus. I'd had it at home for a while, but never really got the time to play it much, and I thought, well, I'll bring it with me when we hit the road, and hopefully I'll have more time and I'll get back into playing the piano again. And originally I installed it underneath the table. The table was removable, so I was able to lift up the table and get to the piano underneath. And in addition to the piano, I also had a small cabinet under the table as well that I built over the top of the battery hatch, just so I could store some extra materials for the studio in there. And it was a great idea, but in reality, I lived in the bus for a whole year, and I think I only played that piano once. And the time that I played it, it was because I was actually doing some work to fix up the table and rebuild it a little bit. So I had the table pulled off, and I saw my piano there, and I thought, oh, I'll just sit down and have a little bit of a play. That was the one and only time in that whole year of living in the bus where I actually used the piano. And the other problem with it, of course, is that it did take up quite a lot of space under the table. And having that cabinet there also took up a bit of foot room, so I couldn't really stretch out my legs underneath the table when I was sitting there. And I do sit at that table quite a lot because I not only use it as my dining table, but I also use it for work. When I'm editing my videos or doing any sort of computer work, I'm usually sitting at the table there. And I also use it when I'm sewing and hand stitching my books and things for my business. So I'm at that table a lot, and it just wasn't comfortable. I got sick of hitting my knees on the piano underneath it, and I wanted to be able to stretch out my legs a bit more when I was sitting there. So I decided to get rid of the piano and that little cupboard that was under there. My mum now has the piano in her house, so I didn't totally get rid of it. And you know what? I don't miss it because, you know, since then, you know, we've been living on the road for a bit over 4 months and I don't have any more free time than I had before. In fact, I probably have less because now I'm busy making videos and content about our travels as well. So that keeps me occupied, and I find that that satisfies the creative side of me, and I don't feel, you know, I don't miss having the piano at all. So that was a pretty big change. I now have heaps of leg room under the table. I ended up buying a little storage ottoman from Kmart. I think it only cost me 20 bucks. And I store my shoes in there, but that's also a great footstool when I want to stretch out my legs and put my feet up when I'm watching a video or something at the table there. Yeah, it also gave me a little bit extra room so I could put the router for my Starlink up under there. So yeah, it just gives me a lot more leg room, makes it a lot more comfortable when I'm sitting at the table. And not having that little cabinet there also makes it obviously a lot easier to access the batteries when I need to. So yeah, that was a pretty big change, but one I'm really happy with because now I have a lot more leg room under that table and it's just so much more comfortable when I'm sitting there. And the fifth and final thing, and probably the biggest thing that I changed in the bus, and the thing that has made the most difference to how comfortable it is in here, is that I totally rebuilt the entry stairwell area. So originally the wall next to the entry stairwell was kind of an odd shape. The front of it had a lower section than the rest of the wall, and there was like a little hole in the top of it. I did that on purpose because my original idea was I was going to have a plant in that hole. It was going to be like a little pot plant sitting in there. You know, it's nice to have real plants in the house, and so I wanted to have a plant, an indoor plant there as a feature. So I built the wall that way for that purpose. And also, I was trying to keep the front section of the bus as open as possible. So by not having that wall come all the way out, just helped to create a little bit more space. And for a while, I did have a little spider plant in that hole, and it looked beautiful. It was really cool. The problem was it didn't thrive, and the poor thing I ended up having to get rid of it because it just wasn't going to survive. I don't think it was getting quite enough light. It wasn't very practical because I kept knocking it as I went past in the hallway as well. So it was a nice idea, but again, not very practical. And so I got rid of the plant and then was left with this kind of odd-shaped wall, which is a little bit weird. At the same time, I was having issues with trying to keep insects from coming into the bus. And you may have seen a previous video where I showed how I made fly screens for the windows, and I was super happy with those. They worked really well, but I was struggling to come up with something to cover the entry doorway. It's a little bit tricky with my particular model coaster because it has what they call a plug door. So it's one of those ones that kind of comes out from the wall of the bus and slides down on the outside, and it has this big metal arm that takes up quite a bit of space inside the bus, and it was really hard to figure out a way to put a fly screen across that doorway that I was going to be able to get in and out of easily, but that also kind of fit around this arm that was inside the stairwell. And I did look at a few that some other people had in their coaster, like professionally made fly screen, like those magnetic fly screens, and there was one that was kind of designed to go around that arm, but you know, they paid $400 for it, and I wasn't really happy with the quality of it. I could see that I was, even after paying that much, I was still going to have to modify it a bit to suit my bus. So I was struggling to come up with a way to have a good insect screen door on that entry door. So after thinking about it for quite a while and looking at different options, I came up with the idea of just bypassing that plug door altogether, and instead of trying to put the screen right in the entry doorway, to bring it back and block off the top of the stairwell. And I realized that if I rebuilt that entry wall to come all the way out to where the edge of the stairs was, it would be level with the wall on the driver's cab on the other side, and I'd be able to create a nice square frame to put a screen door there. And I found a company in Brisbane that made retractable screen doors, And so I went down to check them out, and they were amazing. It actually cost me less than $400, so I paid less than I would have if I'd bought those magnetic sort of screen curtains. It cost me less than that, and I have an amazing built-in retractable screen door that fits the space perfectly. It's midge-proof insect mesh, so it keeps all the small bugs out, and yeah, it's brilliant. So originally this full height section of the wall came to about here, and then this front section was only as high as I think down here. It was only as high as this, so this is where the little hole was for the pot plant to sit in. So I've basically rebuilt the wall to enclose this whole section here, and I just left these bits open to create a couple of extra shelves for a little bit more storage. But basically rebuilding this wall meant that it now comes out to the same level as the wall on this side, and that gave me a nice square frame that I could use to install the door. So this is where the screen slides back into here. This is the cassette that basically just gets screwed into the side wall there. And when I want to shut the door, I just pull this out, and it locks onto a magnetic strip down this side, and you can barely see it on the camera, but there is insect proof mesh here. So the bugs can't come in, but it doesn't obscure the view at all. I can still see perfectly out through the door, and then when I want to open it again, I just pull this back and the whole thing retracts back into the cassette, and it just fits the door perfectly. It works so well. I'm super happy with it. So that's it, guys. That's the 5 main things I've changed since I originally built this bus. And it's just something to keep in mind if you're building out your own van or your bus, that, you know, you can spend as much time as you like on the design and thinking about how you're going to build something, but it's not until you actually live in it and use everything in the space that you get a real sense of what works and what doesn't. So just keep that in mind and know that you might have to be a bit flexible and adapt some things as you go along. But that's one of the best things about building your own home, is that if something does need to be changed or you need to pull something apart and rebuild it, it's much easier to do when you know how it was all put together to begin with.